increase PR performance, which is what I always say, a purposefully ambiguous tagline, because we're doing a lot of really interesting things in the PR space. If you're on your computer, you can actually Google AirPR, and there's about 3 pages worth of press that means we're doing our job as a PR technology startup. This is the CEO right here. I'm going to raise your hand. He spoke on a panel yesterday. That's Sharam. So he's a good guy to talk to. Super knowledgeable in terms of technology and entrepreneurship. He has a background as a VC, and just a really nice. You're just a really nice guy. I feel so fortunate to be working with you. So for all the stragglers that are coming in late, which is totally fine that you're late, I'm just asking that everyone come to the front so that we have a more engaged experience. So my story, which is always minorly awkward to talk about yourself, but I've been in PR and marketing to kind of varying degrees for about a decade. I started one of the fastest growing PR firms in the country, basically focused on just tech launches. So we kind of, I would say, in no uncertain terms, created a methodology to launch tech startups in under 90 days for under $15,000, which in 2008 was quite a boom because, as you know, no one really had budgets, particularly in terms of startups and smaller companies. So that company is still going. I'm no longer in the day-to-day. I joined AirPR about a year ago as a director of product and really the overall strategy and vision of the company because it is a PR technology software company. So Sharam hired me to spearhead efforts on that side. And we're building some really cool stuff. We launched, like I said, the marketplace about 8 months ago, which matches companies and startups in particular with the top independents in the country. So we actually have some of the some of the consultants and small firms here in the room, and we are getting ready to launch another product in about 8 weeks. So we'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end if you guys are interested in learning more. I already kind of did a scope of the room, but just really quickly for those of you that came in late. So how many, just quick show of hands, are with agencies? Okay, and freelancers, consultants, type of people? Okay, and how many startups? Okay. So the title, and by the way, the title on the sheet you guys got today was super long and annoying, so I'm sorry about that. I cut it down a little bit, but the idea that we're going to talk about today is based on Steve Blank's methodology around emerging technology companies and taking the idea of the lean model and applying it to something like PR, which has typically been a very archaic, slow-moving, long-term practice. So I'm going to take you through kind of my thoughts in terms of how these things apply to today's both economic environment and really how people are thinking about PR, whether it be a company or a startup, or even the agencies are starting to change a little bit of their strategy based on this. My Twitter handle's down there, AirPR. I've also put it on like every 5th page because I realized yesterday as I was listening to things, like I wanted to know on every page what people's Twitter handle was. So feel free to tweet, just be nice. Don't send weird pictures of me doing like something like this, you know? Like, oh, that was that girl that did that weird thing in the conference. So who am I? Who are you? This is what we're going to go over. So systemic PR issues, what sparked the PR, what I call revolution, which is actually, as anyone knows who's following the space, we're in the middle of this kind of evolutionary phase. How we think about PR, the new framework, key drivers for this idea of lean PR, and then how do we measure it, and then kind of a sneak peek around kind of some of the things we're doing and we're working on. So how many of you guys, just again, show of hands, get the question constantly from clients, or if you're working internally at a company, on how are you going to measure success? Does this question come up often? Yeah. How annoying is that question? Is it annoying, or is it like, it's not annoying? Okay, that's good. Good answer. By the way, in a recent poll asked by me to my data scientist, there's one statistic that stands out consistently, and that is that 100% of clients are still a pain in the ass, no matter what happens. So that will always be a statistic that you can count on. But in their defense, it's their job, and they're always going to ask, how are you guys measuring? How do we know if it's been a success? So I think that just going into this with that thought in mind will help you kind of frame what I'm getting at. So this is a really great cartoon that I think is just kind of fun to share, but this is kind of I think how a lot of times people think about PR, which is we were able to cut our marketing budget in half just by guessing. So this is kind of, I think, what happens now. You don't really know what's going on. You don't necessarily have the data that enables you to make decisions. This other one is really funny. I think this is how companies and clients often see PR agencies, which is, they see these numbers and then they're thinking, the PR agencies have no idea what's going on. And the little thing says, isn't there a sports metaphor that would explain this? So this idea that PR people don't really have a clue as to what's going on, marketing people. Again, this is a problem that the industry is facing as a whole. And so, again, at AirPR, trying to kind of solve these problems, give data and metrics around that. So one really quick thing before we start, I think this is a challenge. This is a great little quote to remember. This is how I think a lot of startups think about PR, and they look at a PR person and they think, if a woman can make a baby in 9 months, why can't she make 9 babies in 1 month? So when you're talking about, why am I not in Time magazine next week, and why am I not on the cover of the New York Times? And it's like, well, because in order to really understand the narrative of your brand or your story or your company, it takes a lot of thinking around it. And so the problem with this accelerated environment where technology has made everything really easy and accessible is that people think something very artistic and I think strategic like PR should happen just as quickly. And so this is something that you guys have to fight constantly, and I get it, and my hat goes off to anyone that is in this profession because it's tricky and it's getting harder because people want metrics and they want data and they want things to happen a lot faster. Okay, so this is a public service announcement, and I'm doing this on behalf of a couple of journalist friends of mine who said anytime you're talking to PR people, make sure that you say this to them so that we're not ever going to do spam emails again. Are you guys in agreement with that? Are you guys okay with that? Okay, so here's why. And does everyone know what a spam email is, by the way? It's when you send an email to a journalist and you BCC 50 other people, and everyone knows that it's going to 50 people, and not to get lecturing, but this really ruins the reputation of you. And if you're at an agency, is my mic on? Can you hear me? If you're at an agency that tells you that this is okay, you need to quit, and I'll find you a job somewhere else with an agency that doesn't do this, because it's a really bad practice, and it's ruining it for everybody. So don't do it. Okay, so real quick, 5 systemic PR issues. I think you guys will all agree that it's a really difficult job because communication is difficult. Anyone ever been in a relationship? I mean, it's hard, right? So communication on any level is difficult, and this is the core around what PR is built on. So it's tricky. It's not easy, and nor will it ever be. Number 2, there's no standard accreditation system. How many of you guys are APRs? How many in this room? Okay, so 1. It's not required, and it's roughly 15 to 20% of people in the industry even have it. So this, again, is problematic. It's not like, attorneys or doctors or people that have to get some sort of licensing in order to be a PR professional, which brings us to the next systemic issue, which is that there's a low barrier to entry for professionals wanting to start their own business. It's flooded the marketplace. There's 4 to 1, PR people to journalists. There's a lot of, I would say, I don't want to say bad PR people, but there's people who are kind of ruining it for the ones that are doing a really good job because it's so easy to get into the market. There's this thing that I kind of coined called definition flux, which is, what is PR? Some people, it traditionally, meant media relations and a publicist, and then pretty girls at a party who knew how to connect everyone. Have you guys seen that Kroll show, Publicity? Has anyone ever seen that skit? It's the dumb skit that the girls that just show up at parties, and that's PR. It's changing, right? So there's a lot more substance to what's happening now, but still what Sharon, the PR essay took how long to define it? 2 years? Yeah. Over 2 years to have a working definition, which is absurd. And then no standard metrics. This is the biggest one, and this is what kind of ties back to lean PR, is that everyone's measuring it differently. So, for example, if I was to say to Will, who I know, so I'm calling you out, how do you measure PR? How does your client measure PR? You would say, how would you measure it?
I sit down with them beforehand and say, what do you define as a success? Because it's like a snowflake. How do you measure it? I can measure it this way. I can use number of articles, I can use share of voice, I can use percentage of spot-on messaging. What do you see as a success? And I work with them on that. If I know that going in, then it makes for a good relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's how everybody works, right? So even if you're at the bigger agencies, you're going in and you're saying, like, what do you see as successful? So it varies from client to client, which is good, but then it's also bad because there's no one standard that you can measure against. And some client, can be an ass and basically say, oh, well, no, that's not, those numbers aren't high enough. And then you have nothing to go from because there's no standard. So 4 key drivers around what I really see as spark this kind of revolution. One is self-publishing platforms. Again, all of these are kind of, if you were to take a SWOT analysis and do an analysis of all this stuff, all of these things are opportunity. I don't think there's anything that's bad here. I think it's just these are kind of facts. So one is self-publishing platforms. This was a shift in the distribution of information. Then you have mobile hardware, which was a shift in consumption of information. So everyone running around, everyone has information at their fingertips at any given time, which means that things move faster, people expect things faster, they expect them in all these different environments. The third is social, which was a shift in discovering, sourcing, and sharing information. So again, if you look at some sort of bell curve, it's like information used to kind of move like this, and then it would would filter out over time. And now it goes like this, you have these huge spikes, and then it goes down. So you have this constant kind of like, I would say, schizophrenia happening in the marketplace. It looks very bipolar, and so you have to kind of learn how to control that. And the fourth, really, the spark is, I would say, obsession with data, right? So particularly if you're in technology, if you're working with technology companies, but now with anyone really, there's more demand from clients for metrics. So they will get, some are better than others in terms of like how much data they want, but this is a huge issue. I would say not really a problem. There are some solutions to it. Greg from Muckrack is talking next kind of about how social is actually a great mechanism for showing some of this data. But I think, again, this is the key, again, in terms of lean PR and the ROI stuff. So here's a really fun little pie graph, which I'm terrible with numbers, by the way, so I will never give you an exact percentage. If I say something like 97.4%, I'm totally making it up because I don't know any number to that degree. It's like a running joke in our company. They're like, don't leave the tip. You probably can't really figure that out. So the key pillars and how we can think about PR now is in terms of, I think, again, these 4 areas, and you guys are more than welcome to disagree with me, but I think this is how it breaks out. So media relations, a little more than half of what constitutes the PR pie. Then you have social engagement, social media, content marketing, which is growing rapidly, and I think at some point content marketing will overshadow even media relations. And then other things like events and speaking engagements and all that stuff, which I think will always be there, but my belief system is that media relations will start to shrink as journalists kind of go out of the market. Only the top ones will really stay. That will be shifted to content marketing and to social. Oops, I keep pointing at the screen. I'm supposed to point back here to the guy in the back. Okay, so this is what I call a no-shit Sherlock alert, which is, again, reasoning behind why lean PR, this idea of lean PR is so important. So most uneducated clients only want to pay for media relations. So if you go back and look at that chart before, they don't understand how these other things play an important role. And this is your job as a PR professional or as an internal person to a company to educate them and say, yes, media relations is important, but what you have to understand is that you have to have solid content, you have to have some sort of social engagement, and you have to have these other kind of offline things. I mean, the face-to-face stuff is still really important. And then beyond that, as budgets remain static, and I would say static, if not low, I mean, they haven't really been increasing. I think what's increasing is the actual investment into things like content marketing and social. But people still, there's this weird thing around media relations, and decision makers continue to be skeptical about the value. So with that being said, there's 2 major shifts that are happening. The first one is this lean PR idea, and here's what this means. Smaller risks over time based on some